I'm delighted to welcome back to the Neil Wilkins podcast one of my favourite guests. We had a really great conversation around about a year ago about thought leadership, and we went super deep into all of the concepts that my guest, Nicky Billou, believes about both life and business. Now, Nicky always says that business and actually life in general is not a numbers game, it's a people game. And that is going to be, I'm sure, the mantra that will hold true in this conversation. So welcome back, Nicky.
Neil, thanks for having me on, man. I'm so excited to get into this with you today.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Those months have kind of gone so quickly. What has been happening?
So, Neil, since we last spoke, I've written a brand new book, and this is it. It's called Get Booked and Get Paid: How to Generate Six Figures Plus a Year Through Podcast Guesting. And this book has a phenomenal story behind it. And again, it's based on the mantra you said that I always share, which is life is not a numbers game, it's a people's game. And let me tell you about a part of my life. So back in the lockdown and scamdemic era, I had a wonderful part of my business that, as a result of all that, just went poof, disappeared. About $500,000 a year worth of business was gone. And I was freaking out, Neil. You know what I mean? That's a technical business term, freaking out, right? So I went over to my business mentor, a man named Mark Von Muser, and I said, Mark, man, dude, listen, I got to figure this out. I got to turn this around. I got $500,000 in business that just disappeared. And he said, okay, Nicky, okay. I said, what do you have? What do you think? What can we do? What can we do? Right? And he said, Nicky, I got an idea. And I said, oh yeah, what's the idea? He said, why don't you go be a guest on other people's podcasts for the purpose of getting leads, sales, and clients? I'm like, at that point in time, I was desperate. I was ready to do anything. I said, okay, that sounds good. So what do I do? How do we do it? And Neil, he said something to me. Honestly, brother, it's one of the greatest pieces of coaching anybody's ever given anybody, not just me, in life. You know what he said? He said, and I quote, I have no idea, but we'll figure it out together.
And there it is, isn't it? There it is.
Yeah,
You jump in, you just do it.
So Neil, I was like in a space where like, oh my God, okay, all right. So here was the plan. The plan was I was going to use Podmatch, which you know about, of course, that's how you and I met, in order to book shows. So, the getting booked part was taken care of because Podmatch really allowed me to get booked on a lot of shows. So that was wonderful. But the plan was that after each episode, we were going to do a debrief call. So I went on my first show and I had a great time, but I did not get a lead. I did not get a sale or a client. But I did have a really good debrief call with Mark, and we figured out how to do things better. Same with the second show. No sale, no lead, no client, but a debrief. And this went on for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 20th, 30th, 40th, 50th. I was doing debriefs after each episode. So even though I wasn't getting leads, even though I wasn't getting sales or clients, I was getting really good at being a guest on a podcast, right? I was being really, really good. I was starting to figure out what the structure of an appearance ought to be, how to still authentically be myself, and yet get a certain message across. And it was amazing. But it wasn't working yet, right? But I had faith. Mark had faith. There was something in me and something in him that said, this has got to work because I'm just making so many incredible connections and I'm getting so good at articulating my message. I got to 60 shows and 70, not a lead, not one, 80, not a sale, not one, 90. And then on show 100, brother, that final debrief we did, it all clicked. It all clicked. I'm like, oh my God, I know what we need to do. On show 101, brother, I got my first lead, became a client, became a sale. And Neil, I've been on 670 podcasts from May 2022 to today, which is November 2024, right? Roughly 2.5 years. I have generated over $425,000 in sales, part-time, 3 to 5 hours a week. And then, Neil, I thought to myself, if I can do this, I wonder if I can teach other people how to do this, because I'm in the thought leadership business, right? In the teaching business.
Absolutely.
So, Neil, I put together a workshop. We called it Get Booked and Get Paid. We did it virtually over Zoom, and basically hardcore showed people all about Podmatch at the time, although now there's other companies like Podmatch out there. There's matchmaker.fm and podmaker.fm, among others. Podmaker.com, excuse me. And we showed people how to get on these platforms. We showed people how to create some really powerful emails to get podcast hosts to be interested in bringing them on. And then once people got on, the rest of the workshop was about showing people how to structure their appearance so that it would be real, it would be authentic, but it would also open the door to an opportunity for them to get paid. And we've done this workshop 5 times. We've taught this to about 50, 60 people. And we've had tons of folks use the methodology in order to get themselves booked on shows and get paid, get leads, sales, and clients. And once we did that, we thought, wow, we need to reach more people. It's great that we're reaching 50, 60 people, but we need to reach more people. So we wrote the book. And the book, the title, we thought, listen, the title of the workshop's as good a title as any for the book, Get Booked and Get Paid. So we came up with the title for the book. We wrote the book, and we launched it on Amazon just a short while ago, Neil. And I got to tell you, I'm very, very excited about showing people about podcast guesting, because here's the situation, Neil. And I'll give you a good example of this. Just happened, not even in the world of business, but in the world of elections and politics in the US. And I want to be clear, this is not a political judgment. This is not implying support or lack of support for either political candidate. This is simply a judgment about how one candidate used one method to get themselves a result and the other used another. So I'm talking about the US presidential election. Okay. So you may have noticed that in the US presidential election, Donald Trump won and Kamala Harris lost the election. You may or may not have noticed that they used very different strategies to get their message out. So Kamala Harris raised over $1 billion, and she had almost, in America at least, 100% support of the traditional media. And she spent a lot of money heavily on ads on the media. And she also had a lot of outside groups spend about $1 billion on her behalf. And the amount of money she had plus positive traditional media coverage dwarfed what Donald Trump had, yet she lost and he won. So a lot of people are going, well, how the heck did that happen? So Donald Trump, he raised about $400 million, still a lot of money, but not nearly as much as $1 billion, right? And he had the traditional media pretty much virtually all against him. Like 97% of the stories were like Donald Trump is bad in the traditional media. And he had outside groups support him, about $250 million. Again, a lot of money, but not nearly as much as the $1 billion that she had. And he spent very little compared to her on traditional ads. But what he did do, and Neil, I know you're going to like this as a podcaster, you're really going to approve of this. He went on a whole lot of independent podcasts with long form interviews, kind of like I'm doing with you right now. And he won. And people are going, okay, why is this relevant? Why is this important? Like, it's nice, break it down for me, but why should I care about me and my business? And I'm gonna answer all of that, because I think there's a lot of value to be derived from that. First of all, I think, Neil, you and I would both agree that podcasters right now have a better reputation of being honest and truthful than the traditional media. Would you agree that that's accurate?
100%. 100%.
100%. And Would you also agree that traditional media has to answer to their advertisers and to their owners, where podcasters not so much, right? Podcasters don't have to. They can badmouth an advertiser, right? So the problem with the traditional media is they brought this Kamala Harris, the candidate, on their shows for these short narratives that they had pre-decided what they were going to be. The problem is that people are wising up to all this stuff, right? They know this is just a narrative. They're just trying to sell me a bill of goods. But if you go on a podcast, like, for example, Donald Trump went on Joe Rogan for 3 hours. I don't know if you saw it, 3 hours. Now, you can't hide yourself in 3 hours. Who you are is going to show up in 3 hours, right? And, you know, people, I watched a bunch of her appearances, and I listened to him on Rogan and a couple of his other shows that he went on. He was on Rogan. He was on This Weekend with Theo Vaughn. He was on the Sean Ryan Show. He was on Aiden Ross. He was on Nelk Boys. And he was on with Elon Musk on X Spaces on, you know, the former Twitter platform for a couple hours. So she went on CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, etc. The top 5 outlets of traditional media, none of them had over 1 million viewers / readers, right? None of them. They were all under that. So the top 5, let's be generous and say they had 4 million total viewers. Donald Trump, the smallest platform he was on was Aiden Ross with 3 million listeners to that show. The biggest one was X Spaces with Elon Musk with over 200 million, and then Joe Rogan with over 100 million. So Donald Trump, she gets like 4 million, he gets 400 million viewers and listeners. That's a big difference right there, right? Number 2 is the perception, accurate or not, was that he was being truthful because he was going on all these long form shows and he was being truthful. So whether people liked him or not, they figured he's telling the truth. In her case, she's doing these short soundbite type appearances under 10 minutes with very few exceptions. And the perception is that's not being truthful. That's like trying to sell a message. So based on all of that, Trump is reaching more people and with a more authentic kind of brand than she is. And then here's another thing that's really, really, really important. Okay, so in addition to the perception of truthfulness and the perception that, you know, people are getting to see, more people are getting to see what this is all about, right? Trump was going after listeners who weren't necessarily Trump voters. Many of them didn't like him, like the people who listen to these shows. Many of them were not very political, so they hadn't decided they were going to vote for him. He was going after customers who'd never heard of him, or what they'd heard of him wasn't going to make them buy from him, you know, vote for him, etc. Him going on these shows allowed him to, the estimate is, get about 2.5, 3 million voters that he otherwise wouldn't have gotten. Kamala went on the shows where she was speaking to the converted, to the people that were already going to vote for her, all the people listening to CNN, watching the New York Times, reading the New York Times, they're already Kamala voters. She didn't add any new customers. So if you're in business, you're going, okay, Nicky, this is great. So you show me how Trump did this. Why should I care? If you're in business, you've probably been thinking to yourself, well, the way I need to do things is I need to talk to the people that already know me in my existing ecosystem. I need to maybe do some ads on Facebook or YouTube, which are not working, by the way, just like her ads have not been working and are going to cost a lot of money. So the truth of the matter is that spending money on Facebook and YouTube ads 5-10 years ago was wonderful. But today is absolutely not wonderful and not effective. So today, you get to go to people that don't know who you are by going on independent podcasters like Neil Wilkins. So why is this wonderful? Because, Neil, me going on these 670 shows has about 3.5 million people knowing who I am who never knew who I was before. These are my potential customers. Additionally, Neil, when I go on a show, I get to inspire this audience, right? You said I'm one of your favorite guests, so I did a good job with you and your audience. Your audience was happy. You thought, wow, I'm spending money on this. This guy did a good job for me. But Neil, here's what else is really important. You're a businessman. I'm a businessman. We do business with people we know, like, and trust. From the last appearance on your show, there's a know, like, and trust factor between both of us. So there's a potential for me and you to do business together. There's a potential for us to collaborate, to get the message out that I have or the message that you have out to people. And when I called you to say, hey, Neil, can I come on to talk about my brand new book that I'm promoting? You were an instant yes because of that. So my friend, why this matters to your audience and to you is if you go on 2 shows a week, which is an hour of your time, that's 100 shows a year. Neil, that's at least 50 to 250,000 new people who will know who you are. But that's 100 businessmen and women that you've built trust relationships with. I do business with people I've built trust relationships with. The 670 shows I've been on have resulted in 50 sales for me. Neil, is this making sense? Does this whole get booked and get paid concept now go, oh yeah, I should go on more shows? And Neil, nobody else is doing this the way Nicky Billou has done it and is teaching people in his book. Nobody. They're all doing the stuff everybody else is doing. Do you remember a book written close to 20 years ago called Blue Ocean Strategy? You remember that? Renee Maubourgeon and Kim Chan, professors at INSEAD. The whole premise of that book was most business people go in red oceans where the oceans are bloody because the sharks are all going after the same food. Spending money on Facebook ads, YouTube ads, all that old stuff, that's red oceans. It's costing more and more for less and less result. Going on a podcast platform like Podmatch is under $50 a month. You can get 720 shows a month you can pitch to. Brother, you're never going to go on that many shows in 3 years for most people, never mind a month. So for $50 a month without spending any money on an agency, any money on ads, Neil, you could generate 6 figures next year. No ad spend. No ad spend. None. Simply by doing what this book suggests. This book is a very short book. It's 88 pages. You can read this book in under 2 hours. You can take some detailed notes. We're going to have an audible version of it out soon as well because people are telling us they want to be able to listen to it. But I'm telling you, you can buy this book today for $5 on Kindle or $18 on as a paperback or $24 as a hardcover. We even made a hardcover version of it. My main man, that is supercalifragilisticfantastic if you think about it. Because if you start going on shows with the intention, and you need a strong intention, right? The intention's got to be, I'm going on a show because I want to generate leads, sales, and clients. Not I'm going on a show to have a great conversation. Of course you want to have a great conversation, but that's a weak intention, right? And a weak intention is a little bit like a weak erection. It's useless for everybody involved, right? You need to have a strong intention, right? You got to have a strong intention. With a strong intention, you generate opportunity. You generate chances to build relationships with the audience, with the host. And I just don't understand why people don't get how brilliant a strategy it is to go build relationships with hosts. This is so incredible. Like, it's a brilliant strategy for you. You build relationships with your guests. It's a brilliant strategy for me because I'm building a relationship with you.
There's something in this, Nicky, that kind of potentially then redefines the word sales forever. It kind of puts, as you've always said, and you've been really clear about this, always saying about putting people first. It isn't about the product or the service. It's about the relationships and the communications between people. Does this then rewrite how we do sales into the future? Because it feels like it does.
It does. It does. 100%. Because as you said, and as I say, this is about creating a connection with a fellow human being, right? This is about creating a very powerful and personal connection. Neil, the 45 minutes to an hour that you and I spend together, that's gold. That's gold for me. That's gold for you. We get to really get to know one another at a way deeper level. And during this conversation, that relationship becomes an opportunity for someone like yourself or myself to go, wow, I really like this person. And if I come to you and I discuss issues that are relevant to you, let's say you were saying to me, you know what, man, I need a new way to get leads onto my business calendar. And you know what Nicky's saying about using podcast guesting? I really like it. I'm going to buy his book. You know what I mean? I'm going to go buy his book. Is it on Amazon UK? I'm sure it is. Let me take a look. Okay, great. That's cheap. Boom, done. Then you're going to go. He's got a workshop too. I read the book. It was really cool. He's got a workshop. Hey, Nicky, can we chat about your workshop? Well, of course, the answer is immediately yes, right? And the opportunity then becomes, hey, tell me about the workshop. And then I go, okay, Neil, happy to. I'll tell you about the workshop. And then I say, so why is it of interest to you? What's going on? You go, well, listen, you know what? I'm doing really well. I've got a great situation, but I've been looking for a way to increase my lead flow. My lead flow is not as big as I want it to be. It's okay, but it's not where it should be. Do you think I could get a bunch more leads with this? And I go, Neil, absolutely. There's a whole strategy we'll put on how to put you on the right shows. If you're willing to go on 3 shows a week, that's 150 shows a year. I believe with 3 shows a week, once we, make sure that you're going on them in the right way and on the right shows, we could probably get you 100 new leads, maybe 120 new leads. Would that be good next year? 120 new leads, 100 new leads? You're going to go, yeah, that'd be amazing, right? That'd be amazing. And especially if they're reasonably well qualified leads, right? Be 100% amazing. That's the whole point, and it's a lot better to do that than to just, I don't know, pick up the phone and call people and go, hey, you want to buy? You want to buy? You want to buy? You want to buy? You ready to buy? You ready to buy? I mean, God, me just saying that, I start to get a little, I don't even like saying it. You know what I mean? It feels gross and yucky even to the person doing it. But having a conversation like this feels amazing. I'm having fun. I wrote a cool book. I'm here with a good friend of mine. We're having a beautiful conversation, and I get to put out a message that I'm very passionate about, and a message that I believe in because it's worked for me and it's worked for other people. And Neil, would it be okay if I shared a couple stories of some folks I've taught this to? Because some people might be thinking, okay, well, Nicky, you got this big energy. Of course, it's easy for you to go on shows. What if I'm an introvert, right? That's a fair question.
There was my next question. Somebody listening to this thinking, yeah, but I'm not Nicky Billou. Listen to him.
Yeah.
How do I do this?
So on page 42 in my book, there's a case study of an introvert. Would it be okay if I kind of paraphrase this fella's case study? Because this guy's a serious introvert. So Neil, this man's name is Michael, and he's a tax accountant. Neil, do you know any tax accountants? Do you know 1 or 2 tax accountants? Have you met any in your life?
I get the picture.
Yeah. So you get the picture. Not an extrovert, okay? Not an extrovert. An introvert. A really good guy with a dry sense of humor. Honestly, he should have been British, not Canadian. His sense of humor is so dry, right? But he's very introverted. He's no big energy, nothing. So he came and he did our course, okay? And couple things happened. Because he was so introverted, he'd come on all the kind of the training modules that we did and so forth, and he wouldn't say a word. And I, like, when it was all done, I was like, okay, man, like, is this guy getting any results? Because I was like, I want him to get results. Like, I feel bad if people aren't getting results, right? I don't want that. I don't like that at all. I want him to get results. So I asked him, could we have a call? He goes, yeah, sure. I said, hey, Michael. He goes, yeah. I said, how's it going? Listen, you did our course. And then he actually signed up for a sales accountability course that I did. I said, I just want to know how it's going. He said, oh, Nicky, it's going great. This is him being excited, right? It's going great.
I get it. I understand it. It's me. Look, you're talking to me. I mean,
yeah, it's going great. I go, really? Tell me. He said, well, I did what you said. And I went on Podmatch and I booked myself on a show. And I said, okay, great. And he said, wouldn't you know it, the show was a Canadian show. I said, that's fantastic. He said, the host, there was this woman, and she asked me these questions. And I did what you said. Like I set up my talk and I spoke with her this way. And at the end of the show, she said to me, she said, Michael, that was really great. She said, I think that all of my clients could use your particular brand of service. Would it be okay with you if I gave you a few referrals? So Neil, would it be okay with you if I gave you a few referrals? Absolutely, right? Dude, he gave her like 14 or 15 referrals, and he sold, I think, 5 of them to become, clients of his. So he made thousands and thousands of dollars from a single podcast guest appearance. Thousands. And he's an introvert. And then he's in our accountability program. We call it 90K in 90 days. It's about helping you generate an extra $90,000 in revenue in 90 days. Now, this guy was successful, but he'd never done more than $30,000 in a quarter. Okay, that was a good quarter for him, right? So I said, so how did it go with the quarter and the sales? He goes, oh, it was great. I made $89,600. So he said, I didn't make 90, but I made $89,600. He said, that's almost triple the money, the best quarter I've ever had before. I said, wow, that's amazing. He said, yeah, man, Nicky, listen, I really love your work. It's really great. Keep it up. I said, it's just you never talk. He said, yeah, I'm an introvert. I don't talk much. That's what he said to me. I said, I hope you talk more on the podcast. He goes, oh, yeah. Well, on the podcast, they're asking me questions and I'm answering them. That's what he told me. So,
Bless him.
But that's it.
Brilliant.
If you're an introvert, will this work for you? Absolutely. You don't need to be an extrovert. What you do need to be is honest and sincere and real and attempting to be of service. Because if people pick up that, they don't care if you're an introvert or an extrovert. Let's be honest. Some people are turned off by my energy. It's a fact. They just are. Some people just go, this guy's way too big energy for me. No. But hardly anyone's turned off by an introvert. Some people who go, I wish he had more energy. I'm finding myself, falling asleep sometimes in these cases. But if he's saying something that's relevant to them, they're listening. They're listening. They're right on the edge of their seats and they're listening. And Neil, you don't need to be an extrovert with big energy. You can be an introvert. You can still make lots of money by being a podcast guest.
And that's a really interesting angle, isn't it? Because it kind of dovetails perfectly in with your the conversation we had and what you were saying before to me, which was this whole kind of purpose-driven thought leadership, knowing that kind of special, I guess, feature that you might have as a human being in terms of giving service. If you understand that key piece of value, that is then, I guess, the hook. That is then the theme for any kind of appearance. And you can then build upon that over time. That becomes something that becomes then very natural about the way you talk about yourself and the value that you bring. So there's a kind of a consistency here and a patience that's needed.
Yes, 100%. And Neil, here's the other thing, right? If you're coming on a show, you want to be you. You want to be like Trump and not like Kamala. Don't go on a show and try to put on a persona and, change your accent depending on which audience you're in front of. Be yourself. There's going to be people you're going to repel, but there's going to be people you're going to attract. People love authenticity. They respect authenticity even when they disagree with you. They respect it. There's something about being unapologetically you that's magically attractive. Magically attractive. And here's the other thing. I want to share another story with you because I had another client, and this could be someone else listening to this and go, listen, I'm not the most articulate speaker, right? I'm not somebody who's a professional speaker. Can this work for me? Because that's another real, it's a genuine concern. I get it. But I want to share another story with you. There was another fellow who's actually across the pond, as it were, in Belgium. Now, Neil, you know about Belgium and Belgians because you live in the UK and you know that their first language isn't English. And in fact, this fellow's second language wasn't English. His first language was Dutch, Flemish. His second language was French, and his third language was actually German because he had German relatives. English was his fourth language. His name is Mathieu. Mathieu, we call him Matthew My House, right? But his name is Mathieu Mehuz. And Mathieu went on English language podcasts. And again, all he did was what we showed him to do. And in his first podcast appearance, he was able to sell a 3,000 euro, or was it 4,000 euro? 4,000 euro program, a master class. He teaches people who own land and property and want to create their own garden. Now, you and I both know that everybody absolutely has to have a garden and has to have this kind of coaching, right? I mean, I'm being a little facetious over here. This is not the easiest sell in the world, but A, Mathieu is really passionate about what he's talking about, and B, he was able to tell his own story in a very compelling way. Like when I came on your show last time, I told you my backstory, the entire backstory. I didn't share it this time, but I shared a part of my story of why I got into podcast guesting. And the story was told in a way that was real, that was authentic, but had a nice segue into why I'm here. And that's what I taught Mathieu how to do. And the other thing that's important, and you probably noticed it last time and this time, is I like to share stories of people that I've worked with, people that have had some of the same challenges that either yourself or your listener is thinking about. Why do I do that? Because Neil, when you go on a show, the host of that show is probably thinking of a few of those challenges for themselves, and so is the audience. So you need to bring those challenges up to preempt, the objection they have to your method. And you need to do it in such a way that's real and authentic so that they go, oh, so I can solve this. Because, Neil, you were saying when I was telling you about my client, Michael, who's the introvert, you're going, well, I'm an introvert. But then you go, oh, okay, if this fellow can do it, well, then maybe I can do it. That opens possibility up to you. It opens the possibility of you going, I think I want to give this a shot. I want to learn about this. Maybe I'm going to check out his book. Maybe I'm going to check out his workshop. That's what you're going for. When you're on a show, you want both the host and the audience to be thinking like that. You want them to go, this guy's real. I like him. You want him to go, oh my God, the stories he's telling apply to me. Maybe there's hope for me to solve this yet. That's a people-centered approach to business, because people who just want to sell and don't care who the buyer is, they don't do that. They just want the sale. People like me and you, we want the people that need us to buy from us. We want the people that are suffering because of this to no longer suffer. And we realize that sales in this instance isn't sales in the traditional sense at all. It's service. It's love. It's making a difference.
And I love the way, Nicky, that you bring Matteo into this, because he was actually on the podcast. This was probably back in the summer of this year. And I thought, what a great guest. So honestly, everyone, if you haven't heard that episode, go back in the archives. It's around a midsummer time. I think Matteo was actually on the podcast here. Great guest. And so there is the case study going full circle, trained by Nicky. So if you don't believe what Nicky's saying, there he is. We've actually got proof here on the Neil Wilkins podcast. So what a beautiful tie-in that is. I mean, it just goes to show, doesn't it, that this stuff, but it is that network thing, isn't it? Is that these aren't isolated conversations. I mean, we've just seen a link there, and you didn't even know that, did you? That he'd been on the show. So, and again, we're talking about a global audience. We're talking about podcasters and hosts could be based absolutely anywhere, and yet there's a network there that you're tapping into, because then now we've got a mutual connection that we didn't even realize, because I did not know you were going to tell me that story. So this is the beauty of this approach, isn't it? It taps you into an audience that just get it. They're aligned, they're alive, and they're actually almost selling the same level of service amongst themselves, aren't they? It's a great place to be active.
My friend, honestly, it truly is. I had no idea that Mathieu had been on your show. It's a beautiful thing that he has, and nothing illustrates my point better than you sharing that. So
So good. We've got to get the book into people's hands, Nicky. How do people get hold of the book and the course?
So the book is available on Amazon, and I'm the only Nicky Billou in the world. So if you go to Amazon and you just type in Nicky Billou, you'll see all the books I've ever written and published. But I think this one shows up first because it's the newest one. That's how the algorithm works. So just go on Amazon and grab a copy of the book. So the course, Neil, what I got to do is I'm going to just drop it in the chat. There's a link to it. It's a little bit of a longer link, so please kind of excuse me for not having it be immediately available. But let me just type it in right now. And we
will get
will.
this into the description, people. I'll be doing a copy and paste as Nicky passes this over. Can you see, this is how podcasts work? You see, we surprise each other. And this is obviously evidence here that we didn't rehearse this. We did not pre-prepare this show at all. So this is, you're listening and watching this live, hot off the press. So this will be a link that many other people will not have. So I would encourage you to click across.
Yeah, so that's the book for that's the link for the workshop. And I got to tell you, it's a beautiful thing. We're doing the workshop between Christmas and New Year's. We've had a bit of a tradition of doing a powerful kind of pre-New Year workshop for the last few years. So this one's happening December 27th and 28th. It's on Zoom, so you don't need to fly anywhere, but you're going to be around a bunch of really awesome, amazing, heart-driven people, because that's how we roll. We want only good people in our world. And you're going to learn some incredible strategies about how to get booked on shows and how to get paid as a result of being on shows, because both of those are equally important.
Brilliant. And it's all about the call to action. It's all about actually, investing time doing this, isn't it? It's not about just, hey, I was on a show, aren't I clever? It leads on to something. So having that really clear purpose is clearly right at the heart of this. Nicky, this has been a brilliant conversation. I knew it would be. I knew that you were going to absolutely set this show alive. You always do. So thank you so much for your energy, your passion, and just such great advice. And I'm going to be pushing this loud and clear across socials and everywhere else. So yes, get Nicky's book. If podcasting and doing sales in a very, very different way is lighting your candle right now. Nicky Billou, thank you again.
Neil Wilkins, God bless you. Thanks for having me on.